Maderame. Vanity. Almost two words with the same idea, intention, and meaning. The exploiting one, known as Ichiryu-san Maderame, is known for his contributions to the art world, but here's the catch. Are they all his pieces? Are we sure we can trust this rich master and his apprentice? Is there an explanation between his partner Yusuke and Maderame that we may not know about? That, my fellow Phantom Thieves, is to be answered today, when we delve into this cognition. I welcome you back to the Persona 5 Royal Retrospective, a series dedicated to eliminating the evil behind what may be covered up in the game. Today, we tackle the second enemy in the game, Ichiryu-san Maderame, a faulty member of the art community who's known for his variety in styles and major apprenticeship. But is this all his art? What else would there be to find? Is the Sayuri, his defining piece, really his painting? Let us continue where we left off. Actually, before that, I'd like to give a spoiler warning and a slight sensitive content warning. From this point in the game, it doesn't cover as sensitive topics as Kamoshida did, but it definitely touches on topics that may be very suspicious. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the video, and maybe subscribe? And like? Okay, I'll stop for that call to action, and without further delay, let's begin capturing Madarame's heart. Now, a few days after our previous dub and hint towards Maderame, Mishima reveals he has formed a fan site as you gain another confidant. Mishima has a new zero to hero personality and is contagiously positive. He believes he knows that you are the Phantom Thieves and you won't let him down. Obviously, you try to hide it, but altogether you agree to help him. And after showing the fan site to Morgana, he reveals that Mementos exists, the constant palace in the game, which is a conglomerate cognition of the public. Randomized sparks of evil can be taken down here, and being the first shadow you take down in the subway system of public cognition, Nakanohara reveals the real evil. Even though he's corrupted in mind himself, but the real evil is Maderame, a name never heard before by our cast. And he also drops a treasure bud, which is a useful piece of equipment or accessory, which is a nice touch to each request. It's a cool introduction to a main staple of the game, which will have its own episode far down the line in this long series, and honestly, though it's usually passed over, the way this palace was introduced fits well and naturally into the story, especially after some future events. Anyway, after exiting Mementos, we find out that the Shadow Lad that we just took down wants to meet up with a Phantom official to get stuff off his chest, and speaks with Mishima. After that, you get to know the place to meet up with him later on in the game. See, even though we do a lot of Phantom Thieves stuff in this game, the next thing you're thrown directly into is your first finals week with an assembly and a new character to be introduced. So this first finals week requires you to rekindle yourself and all the knowledge you gained most likely from a guide, and have Morgana write the free response questions for you. Make sure to get this right and guide it. It gives you charm and requires some knowledge, but in the end is a valuable achievement in getting platinum, and it helps you in easily maxing stats. Yes, obviously, I just used a guide, okay? But seriously, I am in no way going to memorize the fact that Yoshitsune had a sad story and died before his brother. That was really not a good example. Yet aside from that and the forcible advancement of days, a new very important character is introduced. Due to the heart change of Kamoshida, Kobayakawa, aka Principal Egg, decides to actually screw in his brain and give the many students of Shujin Academy a counselor. Dr. Takuto Maruki, the best written character in the game. His shy yet charismatic personality, plus, without a doubt, the best introduction of a character in the game. So your new gang meets up in the hallways and Maruki approaches you and requests the group to come in for a chat. And with snacks. Even though Ryuji straight up rejects him. I mean, playing as Ren, you got me straight at snacks. And An seems interested as well. And very soon, Maruki becomes a critical character. You see the enticing effect of this counselor that develops one of the best confidants, and a consistent character in the story. Even though he wasn't in the original game, Maruki was intertwined into the story seamlessly, and as I said, still the best written character in the game. Another important character, at least early in the game, is introduced here as well, but she'll get her spotlight next episode. If you can't tell, this is Makoto Nijima, the student council president who is sent to investigate the Phantom Thieves, and is a complete, absolute cuck about it. Yet Makoto is under Kobayakawa's bidding, who is actually under another person's bidding. Makoto is basically digging into the school for the SIU director, who is under another person's bidding. And you know what, let's just keep going. The SIU director is genuinely just shoehorned into the story to hint to one of the climactic parts of the game. Now, quick rant, I genuinely hate the SIU director. Yeah, I understand why he's there. It really seems like he adds meaningless info that we already know. And without him, this game would not change at all. Even though it does seem like he plays a big role, he really doesn't. I mean, yeah, it's cool to see the corruption even in Sai's life to hint to the introduction, but man, this old guy did not need to be shown as much as he is. Yet even though he does hint towards something, his role always seems very neutral, so I end up skipping every single one of his scenes. Literally nothing is lost. Anyway, back to the present, Makoto is basically doing the corrupt bidding and hinting into you guys, so you're not too much a fan of it, obviously. And the newly ticked Phantom Thieves are now pepped to get on to the next target. So, with this in mind, shortly after, the next few days even, while walking to school with An and Ryuji, An feels a strange presence following her. Being the protective boys you and Ryuji are, you find out that An was being stalked by a tall skinny boy with eyeshadow and blue hair, better known as Yusuke Kitagawa. Now, I absolutely adore this character, and even though his introduction is rough and he might look like a creep right now, he's developed in such a way to make him look like an innocent visionary, with some gaps in educational ideas. More on him later.
Is there something you want?
That's my line! You are the one stalking me!
He reveals in his airheaded way that he is of no intention of harm, but rather in pursuit of true beauty for his next art piece. Who does he see fit for the job? An, the model. Big surprise! We slowly see Maderame, Yusuke's sensei and caretaker, pull up in the car next to our cast, and he sees this passion Yusuke has. Maderame is a famous artist that is currently in an exhibit, and Yusuke is attempting to live up to his mentor. Yet the music around Maderame implies that there's something up with his caretaker. With a new grudgy feeling, and the mention of Maderame in mementos, the thieves accept Yusuke's tickets to his master's art show and begin to investigate. In one of the coming days, after An gets taken on a tour by Yusuke and compliments an art piece of Yusuke's that Maderame was assisted in, a scowl comes over the pained Yusuke's face, but he keeps his fake layer of optimism intact. The Phantoms, or anything you call the Friends, regroup and begin to plan. Thanks to the rumor, we now know in fact Maderame is a plagiarist and a possible child abuser. This is further confirmed by the array of conversation on the top of the fan site, and Ryuji making it seem like Maderame is taking people in for development and then stealing their art and taking those paintings as his own, all from this seemingly abundance of information on the phone, makes Maderame absolutely stacked with cash. Consider it the sin of vanity. Knowing this fact, and with the invitation to model An from the tall boy, the thieves scope out the shack of Maderame and begin to interrogate Yusuke on this matter. After reporting to Madarame's house the next day, we approach the door and Ryuji, Ren, and An all confront Yusuke about what Nakanohara said on the fan site and in mementos. To which obviously Yusuke is gonna deny, and explains the situation that he knows with his bias towards Maderame. But something Ryuji says clicks him in, and we get a hint into the true despair that Yusuke is in. But guess what? It's gone very soon after that, because Mr. Sensei has to show up and seem very noble. After that big plot armor of an interaction, you decide to put Madarame's name into the nav out of curiosity. So here's the words. Maderame, plagiarism, the home shack, you get a few failed attempts, but then you land on museum, and whoosh, it's a hit. Entering this cognition of Maderame introduces his true evil and tremendously gaudy, bright yellow museum in his head, and shows his true corruption to the entire party. This rich museum is filled with moving purple paintings of students and apprentices with a seemingly cool theme. The outside is bright, but the inside is a strange, unsettling gray to bring out the vibe of the semi-unsettling music, which in my opinion is tremendously underrated. Oh, also, the paintings. This is a cool way of utilizing symbolism. Now this palace is not as themed in terms of shadows and personas, if I'm honest, compared to the paintings, like the way it doesn't tell a story with the enemies until way later on in the palace. But it's just kind of random in terms of enemy generation, even though the initial scope is pretty peaceful. I digress. You don't learn this until later, and after opening the palace menu, you decide, right, let's go rob a...
For real?
Yellow stacks ready for action, jumping across statues, getting into the big room, with interactable paintings scattered across the wall, all explaining pretty much the same idea. Maderame is a power-hungry man aimed at fame, exploiting talented children for it. Now, obviously we know that already, but I digress. The hallways are legit an art museum, with security guards lining the walls, and a labyrinth of cool designs to guide you, or maybe not so much, on your way. The party follows these paintings with all these names until you reach the flowing statue, with exposure and confirmation that this old hag is going to be your next target. All of this right before you flee. This intro to the palace is pretty surface level, but in all honesty, captures the idea of an introduction decently well. It's nothing really much to write home about. Now, next, in one of the following days coming, you and the gang take on to model for Yusuke in an attempt for information. And after Mona finding an ominously decorated door and waiting for hours, Yusuke apparently has no inspiration from modeling on and wishes on to instead YouTube no cop. Nude model. His intentions are not to be the big horny, go to jail, but rather wishing to capture the true beauty in his art. On definitely isn't down though, so after fleeing, you begin to ask basically what the hell just happened, and after thinking of the strange door that Morgana saw, you begin to become more and more suspicious of Maderame, to the point where you later gather in front of Yusuke's house and rethink inputting Madarame's name into the metanav, but you come to a conclusion. Thinking about the collected evidence, you gather that Maderame is committing plagiarism and illegal exploitation, having a state of deadly sin to his name, which is Vanity, as mentioned earlier. This guy will be your next target. But before you all decide to leave, a reporter shows up. Oya is her name, and if there is any character to sum up absolute
For real?
it would be Oya. Somehow this absolute trash bag of a character, in these few moments, seems alright. And as much as the community dislikes her, you've got to admit, she's at least a pretty decent character for where she's used in the story. Her confidant, though, absolutely useless and not as interesting as many of the others. Pretty base level. After this interaction with Trash Bag, you decide to proceed with your normal life, but with determination for justice. And voila! After this, we get introduced again to our good friend Mission Start. We're set free, with more interactions available and a new palace to conquer, which we will cover now. So, the palace. This palace is cool, and a semi-introductory palace being the second one, and it's basically themed around the heist. Ocean's 8 who? Nah, if I'm comparing it to a movie, it's that scene from Black Panther where Killmonger steals his helmet from the museum. But instead, for an entire palace. Now here's the thing. It's a cool theme and an idea with a great atmosphere that gets better as the palace progresses, but really, it's not on that level of Kamoshida, and it feels significantly shorter. Oh, here's another thing. Now, hear me out. This does not mean the entire palace is mediocre, but compared to the other palaces, it's definitely the most forgettable and probably mid-tier. By all means, it's a really cool experience, but the good portions of the palace do not come until the latter half, so why don't I just shut it and get to it? Entering the battle shows the drop-in theming of palace enemies, giving you a blue-haired fairy instead of something like a blob of slime to represent paint. I'm telling you, slime would have totally fit in this palace. It does latch onto one general idea in this palace way later down the line, but it's not much for the first part. This simple art gallery with a lobby of chests, which for some godforsaken reason I never open, is still pretty cool and honestly very nice to look at. You burst through the hallway past the everlasting spring, which is really cool for a second, let me say. I have this up in my Thieves Den. It's a really nice piece when it comes down to it, explaining all of what this palace will be. Now, passing by the flowing gold or whatever the hell it's called, in the palace, there's a full-on art room. So after getting through that room, there's a corridor with a sus piece of pottery that Morgana cannot resist for the life of him, and we thought he simped for On. This is obviously in a
For real?
maximum security art museum, and it will obviously trigger the alarms, separating the group, dumbass. So Joker is isolated and has to find buttons to deactivate the lasers and retrieve each teammate one by one, eavesdropping on 2 guards who are way too comfortable being art guards, and ends up deactivating and proceeding like absolutely nothing happened. And after all is said and done, the ominous gold upholstery is found to be a treasure demon, a powerful shadow that doesn't attack us but is glorious in providing money, XP, and a great fusion persona. So a kinda slick introduction to those guys is always pretty cool. Anyway, after funny floor hole, you get thrown into another hallway in some back rooms before getting trapped in an exhibit, and have to kick some ass to proceed. This then prompts the first of the will seeds, with some zooming and zipping in a nice hitting area. I have absolutely zero clue why I like getting this will seed so much, but it makes you feel like an executive while doing it. Oh yeah, caution tape. It's after this that we run into an issue. There's a huge amount of security around this one giant-ass regal door. Lucky Morgana recognizes this giant door and instantly connects it to the storage door in Madarame's house. So with that, we need to devise a plan and change Ishiryuse's cognition to the door, making it open. Remember nude modeling? Yeah, this horny-ass cat basically decides, yeah, go pose as a nude model on. Guess what? Next day, she freaking does! I mean, not really, but she accepts it. And then she goes in her entire wardrobe just in order to kill time. You and Ryuji go to this door inside the palace, while An does her thing and diverts Yusuke to this dark room whilst Morgana unlocks it, and times it right to when Mr. Sensei guy gets home. May I mention, all this happens while Ren and Ryuji go turn off some whack-ass security and end up keeping the door theoretically open. And this will obviously change the antagonist's cognition and make Yusuke see the true intention Madarame has, as in what he sees in the real world. Madarame's been faking his pieces and multiplying the one thing that keeps Yusuke going, the Sayuri. With legal action on the line, An rushes into the metaverse with Yusuke alongside her by accident, while Morgana also hops on top of him. With the gang in this newfound conundrum explaining the metaverse to Yusuke, the group rushes through the door in order to get back to the entrance, and are rudely interrupted by a man with a suspicious item on his head. Yeah, Shadow Shogun Madarame exposes the truth, and monologues on how he left Yusuke's mum to die, physically obliterated his pupils for some art, and nailed in the fact that his shack is fake, and used specifically for those evil deeds. Yusuke finds this ironic, and with that, laughs it off, yet with a certain tone of anger in his voice, which is very quickly shown through his
Have you finally come to your senses?
You guessed it, Persona Awakening. Woo, baby! This is actually one of my favorite Awakening cutscenes, placing in the top 3 of the Awakening tier list.
Lest you part from that aspect of yourself. Let us now forge a contract. I am thou, thou art I. The world is filled with both beauty and vice. It is time you teach people which is which.
Very well. Come. Goemon! A breathtaking sight. Imitations they may be, but together they make a fine spectacle. Though the flowers of evil blossom, be it known, abominations are fated to perish!
The use of symbolism with this painting the floor and the slick nature of Goemon makes this scene so much better. And as per usual, we kick ass. But every time I've played this first battle with Yusuke on the party, he
For real?
dies. Every time. Without fail. And guess what? He only sucks at this fight too. Like, more on him after this. So after we obliterate the remaining subjects, we rush out of the room before Yusuke goes to
I'm tired
mode, and conveniently for the enemy, we get ambushed. So, sprinting out of the metaverse with whatever energy we have, we enter the diner. Cafe. You know, the place on Central Street. Here is where we get introduced to Yusuke's blunt personality, as although he's broke, he decides to order bean jello, and after discussing the Phantom Thieves with the Phantom Thieves, he obviously asks to join. And as the absolute bosses we are, we say no. But we really said yes, we say yes. Then boom, you can go into the palace and Yusuke can now be swapped out as a party member. Gotta love it. Now real quickly, Yusuke in the gameplay and battles is quite fun. He increases evasion and has a very nice sense of style that's unmatchable compared to the others. His element is Bufu, or ice, which is very useful in not only the palace, but later on as well, making him an overall pretty good party member. He's not on my main team, but he's easily a secondary and great attack member at that. He does swallow heal spells though, but the trade-off is really worth it. Now, back to the palace. So after blasting through the big door, there's a laser maze to which you approach alongside Fox. It's pretty cool, and honestly is a simple build-up for a first puzzle. So after beating the first guy in the door and allowing the gates to rise, you enter a painting. Yeah, you literally enter it. And you wanna know the funny thing? This is by far the best part of the palace. This simple and introductory mechanic before throwing you into another room with the exact same puzzle and the same mechanic. And as before, this is actually still quite fun, especially with the developmental quotes that dig deeper into Madarame's headspace. It just makes it that much better. You could screw up and get hit by a big octopus man that we won't see again till a future palace and enter a fight, but in order to avoid it, just climb up the mountain then walk backwards. It took me so long to figure this out last time. I was here for a lot longer than I really should have been. All around though, this small drop of spice is by far the most memorable part of the palace. After this part is the new part that is added in Royal, which is the backrooms. Simplistic introduction, yet I quite like it. Something about this palace generally screams short and sweet sometimes. This just implies that too, as the room is simple, but the vertical traversal is truly what puts this down as one of my favorite places in the palace. And the second will seed on top of that is really cool and a nice touch that makes it better. Now after this is what I like to call the distortion room. A room of mega big distortion before the treasure. As we saw with Kamoshida, this one is better, yet really not by much. This one is cool with teleportation and the real Sayuri puzzle, which for some reason I could not get for the life of me this time around, but the new addition of peeling walls in Royal is kinda cool, but all around just really bugs me. Hey, at least it's really not used much. The distortion room's music, which I'll let you listen to. Although it does capture the idea, in reality is just meh. It loses a lot of the luster that the original A Woman had by making another version, aiming for a much more atmospheric idea that sticks, but doesn't get you the best way that it could have been. It's like missing triple 20s on darts and hitting the 20 instead. Anyway, this neat little puzzle with Sayuri spotting and the appreciation of art is pretty cool, and is a much more face value puzzle. Not too in depth, but the infinite idea of the room and portals coinciding with the infinite variations of valuable paintings is quite nice. After getting to a randomly shiny hallway, we run into the room of the treasure, where Maderame himself is guarding his prized possession, and obviously a laser trap. The gang from here walks into a control room, allowing for the removal of lasers, except for the one place that they need to remove the lasers. It also raises some blocks from some rooms, allowing further access, and lights shutdown that instantly gets you caught by one guard. And for some reason only one guard. After absolutely destroying him, y'all rush to the top and counter the last will seed, as well as making the base to the most useful accessory in the game. By the way, this is how will seeds work. Collect all three and they combine into an accessory which you can go change in mementos. So after some more searching and flying on a crane, you get access to the control room. And after traversing the rafters, you decide to pull the control lever. And quickly pull it back up in order to stay stealthy. With your route secure, the gang is ready to send the calling card. Yeah, this is what's going to get us the treasure. So now, with your route secure, the gang is ready to send the calling card, and prepared to take on Maderame himself, if need be. The canvas is ready, all that's left is to paint the picture. Reporting to the real world, chilling with the homie Ryuji for a while, then deciding to send the calling card, the group decides to have Yusuke, a connoisseur of multiple art forms, redesign the calling card, and, in assistance with Ryuji, write it out. Going to bed that night, you get introduced to a phenomenal looking transition screen, and in the morning, you begin to see the reaction Maderame has.
Surichiryusai Maderame, a great sinner of vanity whose talent has been exhausted. You are an artist who uses his authority to shamelessly steal the ideas of his pupils.
Obviously, this letter has been posted all outside of his exhibit, with only a cat, guess who that could be, posting him. So, now clicked into what's happening, you enter the second palace, time monitor the crane rope, and dash out of a window after you've got the treasure to see your high is for real? Not that type of high. Before descending. And on your way out, Morgana decides it's only reasonable to check out the treasure, you know? Literally, how does this cat like this inanimate object so much? But surprisingly and fittingly, you discover it's a fake. Maderame, villainous cocky attitude and all, reveals the entire plan for his Sayuri as he approaches, stating how he intentionally left Yusuke's mom to die in order to take advantage of her son, as well as take her most prized artwork from her. He also then reveals the true Sayuri, which he has abolished and ruined in order for a quick buck to take advantage of the paparazzi and critics, which, as we know, ruined the true self-portrait of Yusuke's mom and clouded Yusuke's driving force to the art world.
Yusuke?
I thank you, Maderame.
Infuriatingly satisfied, Yusuke engages in battle. Maderame, preparing himself in his vanity, melts more than just an action figure in sunlight and uses the power of plagiarism to copy the Wicked Witch of the West. I think I'm actually pretty proud of that one. Now this boss. This friggin' boss is the easiest, most forgettable, and without a doubt the most underrated. The theming of both phases is immeasurably accurate to the ideas of Madarame's headcanon, and makes it just that much more enjoyable to fight. So, Phase 1 consists of baton pass galore and Maw spells running dry. Figuring out which paintings are damaged by what is without a doubt my favorite part, but also gets Yusuke killed. Again. Anyway, magic and persona skills are like your best friend, and here's the catch. Paintings to low health and taking them all out at once is necessary, and ends up adding challenges where they are needed. After that palace, there's a new Phase 2 that's introduced in Royal, which is what I call the counterfeits. Basically, there are now more elemental Madarames that hinder and weaken you as you aim to attack the main body. My strategy was the same here, but the counterfeits lower all at the same element, then go ham on the real Shadow Maderame. That basically sums up the boss, and though it is short, it's also pretty sweet. This point in the game is still resulting in build-up and is honestly introducing strategy further so you can be prepared for the next battles that require consistent attention to detail. Short and sweet, Maderame fails and rejuvenates to tell a story. Okay, so I'll save you time here and basically say, yeah, he's apologetic for all that he's done, and basic sad stuff, blinded by greed. But there is one thing that's intriguing that he says.
What about the other one, though? The one with the black mask.
So, supposedly there's another Persona user scouting these palaces just as you are, but instead with unknown intention. As you were previously linked to these mental shutdowns as seen by the only reason the SIU director has any purpose, the only answer can be the culprit of the mental shutdowns. But before you can go any deeper, this shiny palace begins to crumble beneath you, so rushing out with the real treasure, you return to the real world and get the official, yeah, that palace is dead as hell message, and see Yusuke holding the true Sayuri, his mother's dying piece, in the ready hands of the one who truly deserves it. Now that y'all are safe, you go a bit more in depth on this new culprit. A black mask, he says, the only hint you have to go off of. And now a driving force to discover the next leading enemy for the Phantom Thieves. So after deciding to head home and talk about Morgana's short-term memory loss, amnesia, you get a visit with Igor, who is somewhat active in his palace, introducing some strength to the Velvet Room and the confidant for Caroline and Justine, but more on that in another episode. Right now, he congratulates you and piques the interest of the Black Mask mystery. He sums up the palace basically, nothing else. Can you see why I don't really like the Velvet Room in this game? It just makes it seem so much more important than it actually is. Yusuke calls you the next day in a slightly worrisome mood, asking if the change in his caretaker's attitude, being a more soft, apologetic approach, is a normal occurrence. To sum up Ren's response,
For real?
no, this is the second stolen heart, bro. The
For real?
you asking me for? Totally not because we stole one before this or anything, but he does say that a lot more empathetic. Yusuke from here on out becomes a much better character, with his airhead attitude becoming a mainstay trait that honestly contrasts pretty well with the group. So after this interaction, you're let free into the world again to explore as you may. Yet that new morning, you run into Makoto Nijima, the student council president, who, as introduced earlier, is interrogating and trying to find out your group due to the orders from Kabaikawa, and then from the SIU director. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole again, and this becomes increasingly evident as Madarame's arc comes to a close. So after some dilly-dallies and shilly-shallies throughout your life as a teenage criminal, Madarame's exhibit comes to a close, and this time, Maderame plans a live press meeting in order to apologize for his actions, which obviously has to be broadcast live on the big screen in Shibuya. He admits to his crimes, sobbing and all, and as your group watches from the Shibuya station window, you celebrate on the inside, and a little too much on the outside. Your newly found member and the original group discuss the power they have to change Japan for the better, going happily up and up in volume. Yeah, Ryuji. What a dumbass. The cops come over with suspicion, and for some reason, Takamaki is able to cover the mistake and let you off the hook with some really
For real?
T-story. How? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But I digress. With up spirits and a great time ahead of you, you all discuss Yusuke's living situation. Stumped, Yusuke is forced to go back to his high school dormitory on his art scholarship with a less than suitable amount of motivation. He's free of charge, though still a bit too blunt right now to be socially alright. It's also not revealed here, but he brokey. Like, real brokey. But after that, a small discussion of the next target happens, and the group decides to prep up until the next culprit is pretty obvious. And we settle on our separate ways for now, seemingly joyful. Little do they know, sneaky Miss President is spying on you. Now knowing about Yusuke, she connects the dots and has the Phantom Thieves pinned down. All of this implied, we shift back to the interrogation room. As it becomes obvious, the Phantom Thieves begin to gain popularity, and falsified calling cards and requests begin to flow in. Yet none compare to the next target. Known better as Junya Kaneshiro. All we know at this point is that he's a well-guarded criminal who isn't easily pinned down by the police, as Sai makes increasingly obvious. Now that, I'll leave you to think on until the next episode, my friends, as this has been the third episode of the Persona 5 Royal Retrospective. Now, as much as I would rate the palace closing, this one ends quickly and abruptly, but hints to the next palace in a basic yet obvious way. There really isn't much to say. It's not that climactic. I think this is one reason the palace is so forgettable. Similar to the palace ranking overall, I'd give the closing a 7. It does what it needs to, but really missed the opportunity to give this palace a lot of flack. If people give this next palace a lot of flack, but genuinely the amount of development between these two palaces is gravely important. And honestly, he's going to make the beginning of next episode pretty long. So, I hope you all are looking forward to it. So, real talk for a second. Hi. I just want to thank you guys again for just watching this video. It's like I love to make these, and when life gets the best of you, you just kind of delay, and then break your arm and delay. I've been writing a little bit and stuff. I'm not in an artist block or anything, but all I'm gonna say is I'm aiming for more quality over quantity on this channel now, and I hope you guys can at least respect that. It's really not gonna be as consistent of videos, but when videos are gonna release, they're gonna be bangers. So yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next one, and I'll see you later.